So why is this name so important? And what does it mean? And what is it? Well, let's look at this. Malachi chapter 3 verse 16. Then they that feared the Lord spoke often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Lord and that thought upon his name. Hey, my name is Bill, but I go by the Hebrew name Bill Sean Israel. And I'm going to make a few videos here discussing a few points about the name and why it's important and why should we be discussing it. So I'm going to take a bunch of videos and I'm going to put them all together, and I'm going to try my best to sum this up for you. So I invite you to listen and take your time and reflect upon the scriptures that I give you, and let's reason together. But first, let's discuss this Malachi chapter 3 verse 16, and let's look at this briefly. It says, those that feared the Lord. This word is all caps. So this is really Yahweh. But I'm going to go into that more detail for those who don't accept that pronunciation. But let's just make this clear that those that fear the Lord, Yahweh, in this particular verse, and they are doing what? Discussing or talking to one another. And what's the reward? To be written down, because the Yahweh, the Lord, will hear it. He's watching and he sees everything, so he's going to hear that conversation. So for those who say it doesn't matter to be having these type of discussions, I challenge them to re-examine this scripture and see that for those who think about the name of the Lord, Yahweh, and come together and talk one another about it, they're going to be written down. Their names will be written down in a book of remembrance. And they shall be mine, says the Lord of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels. So you see, my friends, it's very important to be discussing and thinking about this name. And we need to be on one accord to find out what that name is, and to be speaking it all in unison. So we already see that the importance of speaking one another and thinking about the name puts you in a book of remembrance. And that's important because you want to be remembered. See, you got to think about Matthew 25 and the 10 virgins, the 5 that are wise and the 5 that are foolish. Those 5 foolish virgins, what did the Messiah say about them? He don't know them. He never knew them. So it's important to be remembered. And I propose to you is that they weren't remembered because they weren't in his book of remembrance. Another reason why this is important is because the Son of God made this statement here. Whatsoever you shall ask in my name, that will I do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you shall ask anything in my name, I will do it. So we need to get that name right. So what is this name? Well, that same question was asked right here in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4. Let's read it. Who hath ascended up into heaven, or descended? Who hath gathered the wind in his fist? Who hath bound the waters in a garment? Who hath established all the ends of the earth? What is his name? And what is his son's name? If thou canst tell. Here in Psalms 83, verse 18. And let's read this. And I'm using the Blue Letter Bible app. I will recommend this app to a lot of people. I think it's a good app to help do your research. But let me get on with this video. It says here in Psalms 83:18, that men may know that thou, whose name alone is Jehovah, art the most high over all the earth. So when you click on the word Jehovah, you're going to see the Hebrew characters. And I need to add that these particular characters right here, I can't zoom in on it, but you see those characters? Those are not the original characters. So we're going to get into that later in this video. But this is how it pronounces.
Strong's H 3068. Yehovah. Yehovah.
So it's Jehovah. That's how it's pronounced. As they'll say here, unpronounced except with the vowel pointings of. So it's unpronounceable, but when you add vowels, you get this sound. Now, this is the existing one, the proper name of the one true God. They're going to translate the word Jehovah in English and just say Lord, and they're going to put it in all caps. Every time you see all caps, Lord, Lord is a translation to English from the Hebrew of Jehovah. But that is still not the proper pronunciation, which I will get to later on in this video. So I want you guys to understand that all caps is because that is a translation from the Hebrew of the proper name of the Most High. And as we already have read in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4, there seems to be a direct correlation, a connection with the Father's name and the Son. So it's important to know what that name is, and I should add, not to deny that name. Another reason why this name is important is because it gives you authority. Yes, using the name is the authority. So even the Son of God said he comes in his Father's name, and he taught with the authority. See, anyone couldn't be doing this. So the chief priests and the scribes were challenging him, saying, who gives you the authority to do these things? And then later on, after the resurrection of the Messiah, the apostles went out teaching and baptizing in the name, that the name is the authority. They had the authority. And Peter said, we ought to obey God rather man. So they were doing it because they had the authority by the Son of God to teach and baptize. A brief example of this would be when you hear someone say, stop in the name of the law. Now, we all agree that Deuteronomy 28 is predicting the transatlantic slave trade of our people throughout the world. And when you do research, you'll find out that a lot of heathen nations took part in this slavery. Well, the scripture tells you that they're your enemies. And these enemies are the same ones who took liberties and altered and tainted our original language. So I urge you not to trust your enemies. Do not trust in those names. And I would like to read to you from Isaiah 46 verse 9, where it says to remember our heritage. Remember the former things of old. What does it mean? Not just the history, but the old things that was from the original, the old Paleo Hebrew, and we'll discuss that. Now you remember a while back where I showed you how the translators took the name of the supreme deity of Israel, Yahweh, and they translated to their English version Jehovah, and then later throughout the text you'll see it in all caps as Lord. Well, I'm going to show you how we'll take those errors, those mistranslations, and we'll use them as stepping stones to work backwards And as we work backwards, we're going to see that there's little clues that were left, either intentionally or unintentionally, by the translators that will get us on the right track. So the first clue I found out right here in Matthew chapter 1, verse 21. Let's read it. And she, referring to Mary, shall bring forth a son, and thou shalt call his name Jesus, for he shall save his people from their sins. Now, this should jump out to most people when you see in all caps like that for a name. It fits right back with the Old Testament, where you'll see the name of the supreme deity, Lord, in all caps, which is Yahweh. So the translators understood, and they left this in all caps because they understood that this was spoken in Hebrew, and the Hebrew name of the creator they like to put in all caps. That was a clue for us to investigate this further. So let's use the Blue Letter Bible, and you're going to see how they play around with the translation, because there's no reason they need to capitalize this name unless it's because they're trying to connect it back to the original name Yahweh. But this time it's his son. And you're going to see that the name has meaning and function. Okay, so we're going to use the Blue Letter Bible once again. Matthew 1, interlinear concordance. And you could use your own strong concordance to follow along, or you could use this as it's easy to navigate through. That's the reason why I use it. And it's easy to make a video. Let's go to Jesus. And let's look at this name. Let's hear how it sounds.
Strong's G 2424. Jesus. Jesus.
Now, that's the Greek version of it. But the problem is that we have an outline of biblical usage that tells you Jesus equals Jehovah is salvation. Now you need to understand that Hebrew words or names have meaning. So his meaning of his name was Jehovah of salvation, and it will sound like the name Jehovah and salvation combined into one. Now, to prove that, we need to look up the etymology. What's the etymology? I have it right here. The etymology is this: the study of the origin of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout history. So we're going to study the origin of the word. So the root origin or etymology of Hebrew origin. See these characters? H3091. Let's click on this. Now we come to another word. Let's hear how it sounds.
Strong's H 3091. Yehoshua. Yehoshua.
That's a terrible
And
sound.
second entry, Yehoshua. Yehoshua.
That's a terrible pronunciation, but that's how they have prepared it because they're adding stuff to it. But we'll get to that later. Now, this is Joshua or Jehoshua, as they spell it. And it says the same thing. Jehovah is salvation. You're going to see the root word etymology right here. And the Strong's H3068 and the H3467. Let's click on the first one. We get to something we remember. Jehovah.
Strong's H 3068. Yehovah. Yehovah.
That is the existing one, the proper name of the true God. Let's go back. Let's look at the other part of the name.
Strong's H 3467. Yashah. Yashah.
Now, you're going to have to really focus on the word Shah. But I have other people that will discuss this better than I will. But that's the other part. That means to save. All right, so we have a combination of the Hebrew words creating one name. And like I said, there's deception involved because we already have a translation for Jehovah is salvation. It's Joshua in the English. So where did the name Jesus come from? It comes from nothing. It's made up. I hope you understood that. They made that name up, and my belief is for the purpose of getting you further and further away from the truth. Trying to de-Judaize this belief, this faith. Let's go back again, that's so you can be sure you get what I'm trying to tell you. If this name is referring to Jesus, Jesus, that's the Greek version of Jesus, not the Greek version of Jehovah is salvation. But as you see here in Strong's definition, the Jesus Hebrew origin is 3091. Jesus, or example, Joshua, the name of our Lord, and 2-3 other Israelites. So you see, they have to tell you the truth that they created a name for Joshua. That's what they did. They came up with another spelling for Jehoshua. If you can understand that they're creating another spelling, then you can understand that there's some deception involved. So I'm hoping I'm making that clear. Our Messiah spoke his name in Hebrew. Acts 26 verse 14. Paul says, I heard a voice speaking unto me and saying in the Hebrew tongue. And then in verse 15, they changed it to the English, a created name. And I said, who art thou, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest. They knew how to differentiate between the Hebrew and the English. They chose not to. They did it in Matthew when he was on the cross and he said, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. So they know what they're doing. You're going to have to be smart enough to catch it and correct it on your end. Now, when Yahawashi was speaking in the Hebrew tongue, as is recorded in the book of Acts, and he said his name, was he speaking in an impure language? Was his Hebrew corrupted? Would the King of Glory, the resurrected Messiah, be speaking in error? No. I submit to you that the original language is the old, ancient, the original, pure, untouched, untainted Paleo Hebrew. Zephaniah chapter 3 verse 9. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of the Yahweh to serve him with one consent. Let's look at that word pure. Because a lot of people believe this is for a future time that means that no one will know the language until later. Here we are. Pure. Let's see how it sounds or how they think it sounds.
Strong's H 1305. Barrer. Barrer.
Okay. There's no etymology of this word. This is the root word. And the outline usage of this word is to purify, select, polish, choose, purge, cleanse, or make bright, test, or prove. Here, definition number 2. To choose, select. Strong's definition for this word We got a list here. Let's read them. To clarify, to examine, select, make bright, choice, chosen. So a pure language can be a select, a choice, a chosen language. Now, if our Messiah chose to speak in the Hebrew tongue after his resurrection, and in him there is no guile, no error, then this must be the pure language that he was speaking. See, the translators again are taking liberties and making this word mean something in the English that it really didn't mean. When you look at here at 1 Chronicles chapter 9 verse 22, it says, all these which were chosen. There's the same Hebrew word. And it says chosen, not pure, because nothing pure about these porters. They were chosen. So when you read Zephaniah, it's about a chosen language. We could read it again here in Nehemiah chapter 5:18. Now that which was prepared for me daily was 1 ox and 6 choice sheep. Okay, chosen sheep, preferred, the best. So he's going to give us the best language, the choice language, the chosen language. And that language had to be what he was speaking when he was speaking to Paul and said in the Hebrew tongue. What we're going to do now is going to look at the Paleo Hebrew alphabet. There is no debate. Paleo means old. And I have it here right now. Paleo, older or ancient, especially relating to the geological past. So this is the old or ancient language. Isaiah chapter 46 verse 9. Remember the old. If we're going to remember the old, then we need to go back to the old language, the ancient language. And as I already read in Zephaniah, this will be the chosen language, the pure language. And why do I say pure? Because it's untainted. Untainted by our enemies. It has been chosen by our Creator, because this is the language that Moses used and even the Messiah. The Paleo Hebrew script, also Paleo Hebrew, Proto Hebrew, or Old Hebrew, is the writing system found in inscriptions of Canaanite languages, including pre-biblical and biblical Hebrew, from the region of southern Canaan, also known as biblical Israel and Judah. It is considered to be the script used to record the original text of the Hebrew Bible due to its similarity to the Samaritan script, as the Talmud state that the Hebrew ancient script was still used by the Samaritans. Okay. Like the Phoenician alphabet, it is a slight regional variant and an immediate continuation of the Proto-Canaanite script, which was used throughout Canaan in the late Bronze Age. Phoenician, Hebrew, and all of their sister Canaanite languages were largely indistinguishable dialect before that time. The Paleo Hebrew script is an adjab of 22 consonant letters, exactly as the other Canaanite script from the period. So the problem they have here is that they don't like the fact that there's only consonantal letters. Now here's the other issue. By the 5th century BCE, that means before Christian era, 5th century, remember that, among Judeans, the alphabet had been mostly replaced by the Aramaic alphabet as officially used in the Archimedean Empire. See, now remember, we're dealing with the Aramaic alphabet. by the 5th century. That's 500 years before the Christian era. The Jewish square strip variant, now known simply as the Hebrew alphabet, evolved directly out of the Aramaic script by about the 3rd century BCE. Although some letters shapes did not become standard until the 1st century Christian era. So this is important to understand. This Jewish square strip, we'll click on it. So this is what they look like here. This is the current Hebrew alphabet that we'll see in that Strong's and that Blue Letter Bible. This is what you're going to see. Let's read it. The Hebrew alphabet, known variously by scholars as the Katav Ashuri, Jewish strip, square strip, and block strip, is traditionally an adjab strip used in the writing of the Hebrew language and other Jewish languages, most notably Yiddish, Ladino, Judeo-Arabic, and Judeo-Persian. In modern Hebrew, vowels are increasingly introduced. It is also used informally in Israel to write Levantine Arabic, especially among Druze. It is an offshoot of the Imperial Aramaic alphabet, which flourished during the Achaemenid Empire, which itself derives from Phoenician alphabet. So we don't have to talk about all of that. As you can see, that what happened is that the Proto-Canaanite script, also known as the Hebrew or the Paleo-Hebrew script, was mostly replaced by the Aramaic alphabet and became the Jewish square script. Now that took place in the 5th century. That's 500 years before the Christian era. So vowels weren't even used at that before then. Now you've heard some talk about the Dead Sea Scrolls. It says here, we'll read this part here. There is also some continued use of the Old Hebrew script, that's the Paleo-Hebrew, in Jewish religious context down to the 1st century BCE. Before the Christian era, 100 years before Christ, they were using the Hebrew script. You got to remember what the Hebrew script is. The Hebrew script goes back up to this Paleo-Hebrew script. Not this Jewish square script. Not the Hebrew alphabet. See, they play games. That's the reason why they say Paleo-Leviticus. And there it is. You can look at this. This is a scroll known also as the Levan-Q Paleo-Lev. Is an ancient text preserved in one of the Qumran group of caves, in which provides a rare glimpse of the script used formerly by the Israelites in writing Torah scrolls during pre-exilic history, pre-exile. The fragment remains in the Torah scroll. That's the Paleo-Hebrew, if you can see it. This is what it looks like. So the point I'm making here is that they were using Paleo-Hebrew. The language is available. The language is not a lost language. It's not dead. It just means that it's not used because someone has changed it. They have revised it. They have modernized it. Use in the Israelite kingdoms. The Paleo-Hebrew alphabet was in common use in the kingdoms of Israel and Judah throughout the 8th and the 7th centuries BCE. That's important to remember. During the 6th century BC, the time of the Babylonian exile. Now remember, we're counting down. If you don't understand these numbers and what's going on, we're 8 and 700 years before the Christian era. Now we're 600 years before the Christian era, the time of the Babylonian exile. The point I want to make here is that this Paleo-Hebrew alphabet was in common use in Israel, in the kingdoms of Israel, and throughout the 8th and 7th centuries. Now, when was the book of Isaiah written? The prophecies of 1st Isaiah. 1st Isaiah contains the words and prophecies of Isaiah, a most important 8th century before Christian era prophet of Judah, written either by himself or his contemporary followers in Jerusalem from 740 to 700 BCE. So right there, the book of Isaiah would have been written in Paleo-Hebrew. And didn't our Messiah read from that book? Isaiah chapter 60, 61. Didn't he read that? So he could read the Paleo-Hebrew. The Paleo-Hebrew was available during the time of Yahawashi. And when I say Paleo, I want you to keep in mind that this is the untouched, pure, untainted script. There's no adding of vowels. There's no changing of the characters. Let's look at how they maybe, I think this is a good one to look at. The Gezer calendar. This is a calendar. They tell you they were keeping track of time too. Now this Gezer calendar was written in the Paleo. And this is what it's saying here. You're going to see how it transitioned. The calendar is inscribed on a limestone plaque and describes monthly or bi-monthly periods and attributes to each duty, such as harvest, planting, and tending specific crops. The inscription, known as KAI 182, is the Phoenician or Paleo-Hebrew script. So here's the Paleo-Hebrew characters, which is the equivalent of square Hebrew letters, is as follows. Now here's what we see in the Blue Letter Bible. That's not modern Hebrew, actually. That's still letters without vowel points. Then this corresponds to the following transliteration, which space is added for word division. So this is how you would say it in English. It's a transliteration. And this is how you would translate that to words we can understand. 2 months gathered, 2 months planting, and so forth. That's a brief evolution of how you get a translation. The Nathan, Melech, Evad, Hamalek, Bula seal impression, dated to the First Temple period, features Hebrew writing. Nathan, Melech, the king's servant, that appears in the second book of Kings, chapter 23, verse 11. The seal was used to sign documents 2,600 years ago and was uncovered by archaeological excavations of the Givati parking lot in the City of David National Park in Jerusalem, conducted by Professor Yuval Gadot of Tel Aviv University and Dr. Yetaf Shalev of the Israel Antiquities Authority. So you're going to tell me that we have archaeological finds of the Paleo-Hebrew, and there you're going to tell me we don't know. How do we know if that's Hebrew or not? Or how can we translate things? If there's text, all you gotta do is take some time and research it, and you could translate it. Example, on the left side you have the Paleo, the old, the ancient, the pure, which I will remind you, we are to remember the old. So let's remember this. This is the untouched. This is the pure. This is the chosen. The Messiah spoke these words. They read these letters. Our people did. Then we have a meaning for each one. Look at this. We have meanings. Then we have Oh, okay, we have the English alphabet on this side. So now we know how to read and translate it. Maybe that's the wrong word to use, but we have determined that Aleph is A and Bet is B. Here's where they say this really comes from. Probably ancient Egypt. They probably say that they see a connection with Egypt. The origin of this comes from probably other languages. Then we see corresponding letters in Samaritan. So these letters are similar, corresponding. They correspond to the Hebrew. And then you have the square. In the 5th century, or 500 years before the Christian era, the Arabs had something to do with this. And then later we're going to talk now about the issue with this. Start right there. The language of the Hebrew Bible reflects various stages of the Hebrew language in its consonantal skeleton, as well as a vocalization system, which was added in the Middle Ages. Okay, this was added in the Middle Ages by the Mezerites. So at first it was consonants, a base language as well, and then they changed it or add some things in the Middle Ages. And it says here, in the history of Europe, the Middle Ages or medieval period lasted approximately from the late 5th to the late 15th centuries, aligning with the post-classical period of global history. It began with the fall of Western Rome Empire in 476 AD and ended with the fall of Constantinople. Wait a minute. You mean this happened after the fall of Rome? These things were added after the fall of Rome by who? The Masoretes. What does it say? The Masoretes were groups of Jewish scribes, scholars who worked from around the end of the 5th through the 10th century Christian era. That's that medieval ages. That was 500 to 1,000 years after Christ, the Christian era, based primarily in medieval Palestine, in the cities of Tiberias and Jerusalem, as well as in Iraq, Babylonia. Each group compiled a system of pronunciation and grammatical guides. Let's look at this more. Who are these Mezerites? Since they changing or adding things, let's see what they're doing. The Mezerites, system of pronunciation and grammatical guides in the form of diacritical notes, nikud, on the external form of the biblical text in an attempt to standardize the pronunciation, paragraphs, and verse divisions and cantillations of the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh, for the worldwide Jewish community. They may have meant well, but you got some people here that's altering the text. See, these people are Jewish. These are Jewish people, not the real Israelites. By that time, the Israelites were all scattered. This was done by people who moved into the land, adopted our religion, and made these adjustments to our language. And you're going to tell me that we should follow that? It's through their altering of the original text is why we have all this misunderstanding and different variations and pronunciations of one name. Not saying that they completely screwed it up, but I'm going to show you where they took the language and adding these points or vowel points caused some confusion with the understanding. Nikud. Each group compiled a system of pronunciation and grammatical guides in the form of diacritical notes. Nikud. Let's click on that. The Nikud in Hebrew orthography, Nikud or Nikud, dotting pointing, or Hebrew modern, I can't read all that, is a system of diacritical signs. How did it look? See them little notes and glyphs? Used to represent vowels or distinguish between alternative pronunciations or letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So here they are right here. And this is how they're used. They take the consonants of the square Hebrew alphabet that was introduced by the Arabs, and then they changed it and added some points to it to create different sounds and, in a sense, making different meanings of these words. Let's look at how they did that, and you'll see how this relates even to us understanding the issue between when does a month begin and when does a month end. They take two different Hebrew words and he translate them both for month. Let's read in 1 Kings chapter 8 verse 1 and 2. Then Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes and the chiefs of the fathers of the children of Israel unto King Solomon in Jerusalem, that they might bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men of Israel assembled themselves unto King Solomon at the feast. Now here we go. In the month Ethanim. We have a month that's named Ethanim, which is the 7th month. So you see it's used 2 times. So we know we got 2 words month. Now we're going to cross-check this using the Hebrew. And I have it right here, and I'm going to pull up on screen so you guys can follow along. If you have a blue letter Bible, that works pretty good for me. Or Strong's, you can use that and go into Hebrew. And let's look at the first instance where this word month is used. It's right after the part where it says, all the men of Israel in the month. Let's look at that word. Let's hear how it sounds.
Strong's H3391. Yerach.
Alright, now I want you to pay close attention to the Hebrew characters and how they're shaped, because I'm going to bring that up again later, because I want to show you something. How you got this word Yerah referring to month, and then the next word that they use for month is going to be different. Now let's go further. So we know in the month Ethanim was the first, and then the next one at the feast, which is the month or the 7th month. So there's the word again. And how does that one sound?
Strong's H2320. Chodesh. Chodesh.
Now that month, or that word for month, is Chodesh. And you see that's Strong's H2320, Chodesh. Look how that looks. It's a different character for the Hebrew. So you got 2 words, 2 different pronunciations, 2 different character variations, but the translators took liberties to classify them both as the word month, the English word month. So my question to you right now is, which one is it? Is it Kodesh or Yerah? But this is to show you that I did my own homework. We'll go to Deuteronomy chapter 33 verse 14. And this is going to prove to you that what I just mentioned earlier about Yerah is the physical moon, because you're going to see the same exact word because we're using it right here. Deuteronomy 33 verse 14. And for the precious fruits brought forth by the sun, S-U-N. So we know we're talking about the physical sun, the sun that comes up every morning. And for the precious things put forth by the moon. So we're talking about sun and moon. We're talking about the literal moon. Let's look at that in the Hebrew. So what we have here for moon, look at that word. Let's play it.
Strong's H3391. Yerach. Yerach.
So you see right there. So when that word moon is used, it was correct because they used the Hebrew word Yerah, and that makes sense. So this confirms that Yerah is the literal moon. The Masoretic translators are playing with the Hebrew words. What I mean by that is that they're changing the way the word sounds in order to create a different meaning. Exodus chapter 2, verse 2. And the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him, he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. 3 months. Let's look at that in the interlinear. What word is used for that? It's the Hebrew 3391. They translate it to months. Technically, it should have been moons. She hid him for 3 moons. Okay, well, 3 moons, 3 months. What does it mean? Well, see, because that makes a lot of difference. Because when you try to take a word and you change it around to be what you think it is, you can give a whole different meaning of that word.
What I mean here is that you create a whole new context, a whole new understanding.
All right, if we look at the Hebrew word H3394 and look at the way the characters are shaped, but look at the vowel points. They changed the vowel points a little bit. But look at the way the characters are shaped. They're the same characters, but they added their vowel points. And let's listen to how they changed the way it sounds now.
Strong's H3394. Yareah. Yareah.
Yareah. Yareah. How did you get Yareah out of the same 3 Hebrew words that you use for Yarah? Yareah and Yarah.
Now you see these dots and these dashes, that's the vowel points. And they differ from the same word. That's to give it a different pronunciation. And it's my belief that this was done strictly to justify their desire to create a different meaning out of the same word. Because one of these words here, the meaning derives from the Aramaic alphabet in the 5th century. These Jewish square scripts evolved, and then they gave them a different meaning later, and the Arabs are the one who uses the moon to tell their times and then go by their months. So they took the Achaemenid Empire, the Arab alphabet, and their culture to influence the definition of our Hebrew word moon, to translate it to month.
The original writers, our people, that's not what they meant. They didn't make this complicated. They didn't want to put a bunch of different meanings to one word. They meant moon every time they said moon. So when we read that in Exodus chapter 2, the translators took liberties and they said, well, that makes more sense to sound like 3 months. But technically it could have been 3 moons. And why am I emphasizing that each over again? Because 3 moons can be just like what I read earlier, 3 seasons. Because the moon is a sign, or it's for the seasons. It is a sign of feast. It is for seasons. So once you understand that it could have been 3 seasons, or it could have been 3 feasts, then you can say, well, she hid. Who was she hiding? Moses. She hid Moses for 3 feasts. And you can read about that. Let's go and look at that. And
we read here in Ecclesiasticus 43, verse 6, that the moon is a sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. So you need to understand that there is a new moon in the month. That does not make the new moon the start of the month. You need to know that a new moon or a full moon was when you would have feast on certain months, as is written here in the book of Jubilees, chapter 6. There is a new moon on the 1st month, and a new moon on the 4th month, and a new moon on the 7th month. These are your annual feast days: unleavened bread, Pentecost, and tabernacles.
Basically, what I want to say is that Moses could have been hidden for 3 seasons, 3 feasts, or simply 3 lunar cycles. It does not necessarily mean 3 months. The translators took liberties and they made that determination that that's what the word means. But the vowel points throws you off. And so this is for Jedediah Malik and those who listen to him, that when you try to make sense of the scriptures in Hebrew and you start playing around with how a word sounds by adding the vowel points to it and creating a different meaning, now you got all this confusion. This is the reason why we're having this argument with the people who use a lunar based calendar, because the translators took the word, changed it by adding vowel points, and now they read it in their translation and they say, oh, well, the moon must be how we start our months, because every time that word urea in there and they change the vowel points and referring to months.
Malachi chapter 1, verse 11. For from the rising of the sun even unto the going down of the same, my name shall be great among the Gentiles, and in every place incense shall be offered unto my name, and a pure offering. For my name shall be great among the Gentiles, says the Lord of hosts. So we agree that Malachi, verse 11 through 12, is prophecy. But what prophecy and what time frame is it for? Some are using this verse to say, okay, well, this justifies that the name of Jesus is the only name that's great among the Gentiles to this day. No, however, when you really read the context of this full chapter, and you do line upon line, precept upon precept, you get a better understanding. When we look at verse 11, it actually proves that the name cannot be Jesus, and I'll show you how. The part we have to look at first is it says, in every place incense and a pure offering. Now, let me ask you this. Are people offering pure offerings and sacrifices in every place? No. This must be referring to a future time. All we need to do is look one book over at Zechariah chapter 14, verse 16, and it describes that time. Let's start at Zechariah chapter 14, verse 9. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. And now we come to verse 16. And it shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This is your pure offering right here, people, in the millennial kingdom, when all the heathens, the Gentiles, are required to serve and participate in the feast and bring an offering. Verse 21. Yea, every pot in Jerusalem and in Judah shall be holiness unto the Lord of hosts, and all they that sacrifice shall come and take of them and seethe therein, and in that day there shall be no more Canaanite in the house of the Lord. But let's go back to Malachi and read the rest of the verses and keep it all in context. But you have profaned it, in that you say the table of the Lord is polluted. Well, that's the table of showbread, and the fruit thereof, even his meat, is contemptible. Verse 13, you say also, behold, what a weariness it is, and you have snuffed at it, saith the Lord of hosts. So they were getting disgusted doing his sacrifice and offerings. And you have brought that which was torn and lame and the sick, thus you brought an offering. Should I accept this of your hands? They weren't bringing the best. I think we can agree that from verse 12 and 13 is past tense. However, verse 11 was referring to the future, and now we're going to get back to the future on verse 14. Verse 14 is where we get the full understanding. For I am a great king, says the Lord of hosts, and my name is dreadful among the heathen. So we have both the name being great among the heathen and dreadful. You have to understand that these two words go hand in hand. Daniel 9:4. And I prayed unto the Lord my God, and made my confessions, and said, O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping the covenant and mercy to them that love him, and to them that keep his commandments. The Lord's name is associated with fear, but it is great due to his power of salvation. Isaiah 59:18. According to their deeds, accordingly he will repay to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. Do you see the key words? Rising of the sun. This goes right back to Malachi chapter 11. For from the rising of the sun, even unto the going down of the same. Ezekiel 38:23. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am the Lord. Do you see the pattern yet? This is referring to when Yahawashi demonstrates his power in the future, just like during the times of Exodus. He's going to kill a lot of people and gather Israel. So his name is not great among the Gentiles at this present time. It cannot be the name Jesus. They have no fear in that name. They have not seen Jesus do anything for Israel, nothing great. Plus, the Gentiles don't currently know the name. So let's go to Jeremiah 16:21 to prove that. We'll start at verse 16 for full context. Behold, I will send forth many fishers, says the Lord, and they shall fish them. Well, that's happening right now. That's the present time. Now, here's the future. And after, I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them. So right here, we see that the tables are being flipped. Israel was the hunted, and now they are the hunter. They're hunting their enemies. From every mountain, and from every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. So when the Most High delivers Israel and gives us the power, we're going to pursue our enemies out of every place, and they're going to be hiding, and you're going to hunt them down. Verse 17. For mine eyes are upon all their ways. They are not hid from my face, neither is their iniquity hid from mine eyes. So see, they're not going to get away. They can't hide. Verse 18. And first, now you can read about this in Revelation 18 verse 16. I will recompense their iniquities and their sins double,
because they have defiled my land. They have filled my inheritance with the carcasses of their detestable and abominable things. This is when the Most High takes down Babylon the Great. He is going to repay her double. Verse 19. O Lord, my strength and my fortress and my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come unto thee from the ends of the earth, and shall say, Surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and the things that were, there is no profit. So see, this is the future. This is when the Gentiles are going to say, confessing their sins of their father. And this is exactly what they're going to say in verse 20. Shall a man make gods unto himself, and they are no gods? See, that's a rhetorical question. Verse 21. Therefore, behold, I, referring to the Most High, will this once cause them, referring to the Gentiles, to know. I will cause them, the Gentiles, to know my hand and my might, and they shall know that my name is the Lord, and that is Yahweh. So you see, this is referring to the end, when he brings about their destruction. Then they will know his name is the Lord, which I've already explained earlier in this video. When you see it all caps, it is Yahweh. So when we go back to Malachi, that's when his name, Yahweh, shall be great and dreadful among the heathen, the Gentiles, because he's going to cause them to know his hand and his might. That's the same terminology as he did in ancient Egypt, with a stretched out arm and a mighty hand did he bring Israel out of bondage, and he punished the Egyptians. He's going to do the same thing to these heathens, to the Gentiles, when he delivers us. Then they're going to see it. Then they will know his name. They don't currently know it now because they have not seen that power. They have not experienced that salvation, that dread, that terror of the Most High. But it's coming. So what about the stammering lips? Isn't the Most High going to speak to us in another tongue? Absolutely. It means exactly what the prophet said. But let's clarify. He speaks to us with English-speaking prophets, priests, ministers, and teachers. But when you read the full context, you'll realize that this is a curse. This is the punishment for the disobedience of Israel. Verse 7. God, the Most High, is mocking us because we wanted to be like the Gentiles so bad, he threw us into their hands, and now we use their language. It confounds us. This is not to be embraced. Even the way we have to study the scriptures line upon line is a type of punishment. Just look at verse 13. But the word of the Lord was unto them precept upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line. Here a little and there a little, that they might go and fall backward and be broken and snared and taken. Well, I hate to tell you, Israel, but the Most High is trying to trap us because of our wickedness. He's trying to ensnare us so we could be taken by the judgment. His goal is to shift out the best of Israel, those who are really studying. This is the equivalent of how Yahawashi spoke in parables. It wasn't for everyone to understand, only for the children of the kingdom, the chosen. And this is the reason why we have to study, to show ourselves approved, Approved of what? To escape. To be accounted worthy to escape the judgment. And what is that judgment? It's the judgment of the hailstones. Read about that in verse 2 and 17. Verse 17. Judgment also will I lay to the line, and righteousness to the plummet, and the hail shall sweep away the refuge of lies, and the waters shall overflow the hiding places. Now, Isaiah 33:16 tells you how you can rise above the coming hailstorm, but I digress. To wrap this up, just because we are cursed to speak with stammering lips in our captivity doesn't mean we are to embrace it as the truth. It doesn't justify using a false name of our Messiah with those stammering lips and another tongue. It is just part of our test, and to do what the prophet Isaiah wrote, remember the former things of old, which I propose to you is our old, ancient Hebrew writing in its original, chosen, pure text.
Okay. What about Yeshua? What about Yehoshua? You guys heard those names before? Yeshua. Show them real quick another slide. I want to show you guys something. I've taken the liberty of writing his name in modern Hebrew characters. This first character is the same as it was in the ancient Hebrew. It's a Yah, and then a Ha, and then a Wa, and then a Shah, and then an I. How do I get Yehoshua out of that? How do I get Yeshua? Wait a minute, there's too many letters for his name to be Yeshua. His name has to be Yahawashi. But if I erase that part at the bottom and those letters from the top, and someone who speaks modern Hebrew walked into the room, they would look at that and they would say, Joshua. Because Joshua and Yahawashi are the same name. Does that make sense to you guys? So we call him Jesus because we were born into captivity, because we speak English. But English is not our original language. Hebrew.
Now, as you can see here, we have the Yah. Okay, looking back over here, this is the Yah. Ha, right there. The Wa, Shah, which looks like a W. It's right here. But like we said, the A will be silent, and you have the I, which is like a circle. It actually represents an eyeball. Okay. The I. So Yahawashi. And we have a connector here. Okay. Actually, we had the connector for the Father's name too. All right. Yahweh. You put a connector in between the Wa and the Ha. Okay. Which actually, and that's how you would silence the A, by connecting these two.
Ishmael spoke Hebrew. That's why the Arabic language is practically identical to the Hebrew language. See, the Masoretes didn't get their hands on this. If anybody like to dispute this, or they say this is made up or fake, I put down quite a bit of evidence. Thank God I live here in Brooklyn. There's plenty of Arabic-speaking people around. I just wrote out the name of Yah, the name of the Father, and the name of the Son in Arabic with the equivalent of in Arabic, and you'll see.
This Arabic for me here. And what do you see there, Hassan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And this
is Yahoo.
Yeho.
Yahoo.
Yehovah.
Yahoo.
Yahweh. Okay. And this
one. Yahawashi.
Yahawashi.
Yeah.
Thank you. Shukran. All right. So this gentleman here is going to read this here for me. He speaks Arabic. He's gonna pronounce you what this means.
Yes, yeah. Ha. Okay?
So this is what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ha.
And this together, so is yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. And this one here?
And this, yeah. Wah. Yeah. Wah.
This
Yeah. Wow. Yahawaha. Okay.
That's Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Yahweh. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Yes. Ya. Ha. Wow. Shin. Ain. Yahwash.
Yahweh.
Yahawasha.
Yahweh Shah.
Yeah.
God bless you. Shukran.
Thank you.
So in conclusion, I want to read to you from the book of Baruch, chapter 2, starting in verse 27. God's promises recalled. But with us, O Yahweh, our Elohim, you have dealt in all your clemency and all your great mercy. This was your warning through your servants Moses, the day you ordered him to write down your law in the presence of the Israelites. If you do not heed my voice, surely this great and numerous throng will dwindle away among the nations, to which I will scatter them. For I know they will not heed me, because they are a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivity, they shall have a change of heart. They shall know that I, Yahweh, am their Elohim. I will give them hearts and heedful ears, and they shall praise me in the land of their captivity, and shall invoke my name. Then they shall turn back from their stiff-necked stubbornness and from their evil deeds, because they shall remember the fate of their fathers who sinned against Yahweh. And I will bring them back to the land which my oath I promised to their fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they shall rule it. I will make them increase. They shall not then diminish, and I will establish for them as an eternal covenant that I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And I will not again remove my people Israel from the land I gave them. So I'm reading this because I want you to understand the key part here. He says that we come into the land of our captivity, which is where we're at right now. We're all in the lands of our oppressors, captive. He says he's going to give us a change of heart and heedful ears. So, with that being said, he also goes on to say, and they shall praise me in the land of their captivity, and shall, that means future tense, they will invoke my name. Now, my question to you is, how can we invoke his name if all of our people are using different pronunciations, different variations? Jesus, Yahushua, Yeshua. It's got to be one name, folks. He didn't say names. One name. And if we could get that one name, it says, and I will bring them back to the land which with my oath I promised to their fathers. So do you want to go back to your homeland? Then we need to invoke the name in unison. We need to invoke the name, a singular name. So I urge you all, I hope this video, I labored on it for days, has been enlightening to you. If you have questions, you can sign up for YouTube and you can make comments. And if you can accept it, if you can accept using the name Yahawashi, then I invite you to praise and worship with me, to pray in that name, Yahawashi. For those of you far away, you can praise and pray with me in Yahawashi's name online. And for some of those close associates, if you can accept the name, then I invite you to visit and we can praise and pray in unison in the name of Yahawashi. I'm not trying to take you out of your camps or your churches. You can stay where you're at. But I'm challenging you all. I'm encouraging you all to find the name, the one name. And I'm giving you the evidence. I'm giving you the material to pique your curiosity. You can do your own research. You don't have to just listen to me. But I'm urging you to investigate this and not just sit down and say, oh, it doesn't matter what name you use. That is a lie. We have to use the name that he has been called from the beginning. Yahawashi. And in the video I proved that. So let's use this name Yahawashi and gain the blessings that come with it. He said, whatever you shall ask in my name, I will do it. Why? So that the Father may be glorified in the Son. So how are you going to get the Father to be glorified in the Son if you're not using the right name? He says he comes in his Father's name. It cannot be Jesus. It has to be Yahweh, Yahawashi. So with that said, I say shalom and look forward to more videos in the future. Yahawashi bless you. The prophetess Abigail would like to say a few words. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Shalom, brothers and sisters, Israelites. I just wanted to comment on Brother Bill Shaw's video. I want you all to take this very seriously. I want our people to come together and worship God in his true name. Yahweh, Yahawashi is his son's name. I want you to invoke that name so that we can go home to our promised land. The promised land of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I want us Israelites to come together under this name, Yahawashi. That is his name. Yahweh is his father. You know how it is. You have a son. That son wants to be named after his father. So this is the same with God. He has a son, and that son wants to be called by his father's name. He said, I come in my father's name, Yahweh, and his name is Yahawashi. With that, I bid you shalom, Shabbat, or Ned.
Which means Shabbat, delight.